Welcome everyone to our community prayer today. And our speaker and leader today is Miss Gilana Levavi, who will present the theme or a taste of Sukkot. And as you know, this Monday, uh, our Jewish sister and brothers just celebrated Yom Kippur. Um, so we'll really expecting to learn many things from Miss Gilana. So I will give the time for you to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Welcome. My name is Gilana Levavi, and I am proud to be an alum of the International Peacemaking Program. During today's communal prayer, I will share some thoughts, images, and music inspired by the recent holiday of Yom Kippur and the upcoming Jewish holiday of Sukkot. I will discuss themes including humility, joy, and vulnerability, and how they manifest through these holidays, especially through Sukkot. As I share, I invite you to reflect on these themes as well, and to think about ways that you glean meaning and build meaning around these broad themes in your own traditions and practices. And there will be a chance to share about this later in the prayer session. So to begin, the liturgy of Yom Kippur highlights humility and vulnerability. Yom Kippur, the Jewish Day of Atonement, is thought to be the holiest day on the Jewish calendar. On this day of fasting, reflection, prayer, and forgiveness, poems in which the prayer leader, trembling, begs permission to pray before God despite their own flaws have been added to traditional liturgy over the centuries. On Yom Kippur, which as Hans mentioned was this past Sunday night through Monday night, and also more broadly during the season of Teshuvah, repentance or return, that takes place for an entire month leading up to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. During these times, I see humility and vulnerability manifested mostly in the ways that worshipers approach one another to ask for forgiveness and approach God through prayer to ask for forgiveness. On Sukkot, though, the holiday, the festival that comes just 4 days after Yom Kippur, Jews leave their more permanent homes and enter temporary shelters, known as Sukkot. Through dwelling in Sukkot, we live out, not just in individual communications asking for forgiveness, but in our daily lives, including mundane tasks like sitting and eating. In these mundane tasks of everyday life, we live out the themes of vulnerability and humility. The predominant theme of Sukkot, though, is not really either of those, but rather joy. Sukkot is known as Zman Simchatenu, the time of collective rejoicing. I invite you now to visit with me some Sukkot that I have been privileged to dwell in and to play some role in building or decorating in recent years. A sukkah, which is the singular of Sukkot, is a structure that has at least 3 walls, which can be made of just about any material, including wood and tarps. And the roof of the sukkah, known as schach, must be made from natural materials that provide more shade than sun, but allow the stars to be seen at night. The first several pictures that you'll see in a moment are from the sukkah built at Hartford Seminary last fall. The decorations inside that you'll catch a glimpse of say welcome in different languages. Others are from the sukkah at the synagogue where I teach religious school, my family sukkah right here in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, a friend's sukkah in New Haven, and the Rutgers Hillel sukkah from a few years ago. As we visit these Sukkot together and take a moment to dwell on them, if not literally actually in them, I will play music from Hallel. Hallel is a collection of psalms of celebration and thanksgiving that are sung on holidays, including Sukkot. As you watch and listen, take a few minutes to reflect on themes like joy, humility, and vulnerability. I also encourage you to imagine that you are indeed inside of these Sukkot structures, feeling the autumn air on your face, the sun peeking through the schach on the roof of the sukkah, and the wind tugging at the flimsy tarp walls. ago, I was asked to give a talk on one of the days of Sukkot, toward the end of the holiday, for a Jewish student community at Rutgers, where I went to undergraduate school. My grandfather, whom I have been privileged to have been close with and to have learned so much from, had passed away the summer before that fall semester. As I thought about what to speak about, I was holding questions about how to make sense of and experience the joy of Sukkot while holding the grief of this loss. Such questions of how to be joyful while holding grief and vulnerability loom so large this year. Though I will offer some thoughts on this question drawn from the holiday of Sukkot, I attempt to not try to answer this question, but to acknowledge it and to validate a diverse array of experiences and emotions. I hope that these thoughts, while drawn from teachings based in Sukkot, may inform broader thinking on widely applicable themes like joy and vulnerability. There are a few reasons for the building of Sukkot, temporary structures for the holiday known as Sukkot. One such reason is that these shelters are reminiscent of the way in which the Israelites dwelt in temporary shelters as they wandered and traveled through the desert and the wilderness for 40 years after fleeing Egypt. I believe I first read this thought from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who highlights that Sukkot, the holiday that commemorates not a victory or a culmination, but rather the experience of journeying, of being in between two places. For the Israelites, it was Egypt and the land of Israel, is singled out as Zman Simchatenu, the season of rejoicing. Sukkot poses a challenge and an opportunity to find joy while being in a vulnerable, uncertain state. The Torah speaks about joy on Sukkot in a few places, and this here is one of them in Deuteronomy, or Devarim, chapter 16. I will chant this first verse in Hebrew as it would be chanted according to some traditions in synagogues directly from a Torah, and I will chant the first verse in Hebrew and then translate and discuss in English. Okay. 1 second. Put my shoes on. Okay. ושמחת בחגיך אתה ובנך ובתך ועבדך ואמתך והלוי והגר והיתום והאלמנה אשר בשעריך. So this verse speaks about rejoicing on the holiday of Sukkot, and it specifies that whoever this is speaking to, should rejoice on the festival together with your son and daughter, your male and female slave, the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow in your communities. These people who fit into these categories are in vulnerable social situations. The fatherless and the widow specifically are identified here by the loss that they have experienced. Yet, whomever this verse is addressed to must not exclude these people from celebration, but rather must rejoice with them. The kind of joy to be cultivated on Sukkot is one that must include the vulnerable and the grieving members of one's community, and as well as the vulnerable and grieving parts of oneself. And speak a bit more about the second verse that comes right after it. So also talks about having joy. And there is a song that's kind of iconic of this holiday that is based on the first two words of this first verse and the last two words of the last verse. So you shall rejoice in your festival, and as it's translated here, you shall have nothing but joy. And so the song sort of skips over all the other parts in these verses, and just really highlights those joyful parts. And yeah, and so we'll listen to just a moment of it now, and it will get louder in a minute. so as you heard here, these words are often sort of repeated over and over, as if sometimes I think as if sort of trying to get yourself into the ability to feel that that joy while carrying everything that we carry with us. And so the holiday of Sukkot is a week long, 8 days or a week long. And on Shabbat, the Sabbath that falls in the middle of this holiday, many communities have a tradition of reading the entire book or parts of the book of Kohelet or Ecclesiastes. And this universalistic wisdom text also speaks to themes of vulnerability, temporariness, and joy. The Hebrew word havel resonates again and again throughout this text. Havel, often translated as futility or vanity, comes from one of many Hebrew words for breath, but it signifies a certain kind of breath. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs translates it as shallowest breath. Kohelet, the author of this text, powerfully expresses his experiences of vulnerability and temporality. And so this is just one verse from this text. This is the second verse in the first chapter, and I will do my best to chant it in the chanting style used for this text. Okay. Havel havalim amar kohelet havel havalim hakol havel. And just from this one verse, you can hear that root havel, havalim, havel resonating again and again as Kohelet wrestles with this. Right, and so he's saying utter futility or shallowest breath, the shallowest breath, it is all but breath. And yet in other parts of this text, Kohelet also speaks of joy, and he speaks of a kind of joy that is not dependent on particular material goods or particular social circumstances. And so, okay, and so Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, former chief rabbi of the UK, writes this, just posted this morning on his Facebook page, about an important distinction between happiness and joy. And he says this: ultimately, joy, the overwhelming theme of the festival of Sukkot, is what we feel when we know that it is a privilege simply to be alive. Inhaling the intoxicating beauty of this moment amidst the profusion of nature, the teeming diversity of life, and the sense of communion with those many others with whom we share a history and a hope, even if this year we cannot physically share a sukkah. We are all strangers on earth, temporary residents in God's almost eternal universe. And whether or not we are capable of pleasure, whether or not we have found happiness, we can all feel joy. And so I will now share a song, which is a song and prayer for peace. And in this song, you'll hear the phrase Sukkot Shlomecha. Sukkot comes from the word sukkah or Sukkot and means a shelter. And Shlomecha comes from the word shalom, which means peace. And so the whole phrase Sukkot Shlomecha means a shelter of your peace. And so this song, it comes from a longer poem. Talks sort of prays and asks for this shelter of peace to be revealed and spread over us. And so it's a short song that we'll play several times, and I invite you to clear your mind and listen to the sounds of the Hebrew words, which are transliterated and translated here. And when you feel ready, you can also begin to think about the question that is here at the bottom. The question being what from your tradition helps you to cultivate joy, even amidst and without dishonoring difficulty, grief, and vulnerability. If you feel comfortable, you can feel free to reflect a bit on that. question, but also just to relax and hear the sounds of the music. So I invite anyone, if you would like to share any reflections on that question, either in the chat or to unmute briefly, and we'll take just a few moments to allow some space for people to share on that question. The question again is, what from your tradition helps you to cultivate joy, even amidst and without dishonoring difficulty, grief, and vulnerability?
Gilana, that was beautiful. I really enjoyed that. I just wanted to quickly mention how when we had in the Muslim tradition, when we had, we're going through our Eid, our special festival, it was COVID at the same time. And so we were away from the community, but we had to do just that, is rejoice, even though we were not in community. And it just, hearing your beautiful words and the beautiful words of that song reminded me of that. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
Jews have always said.
So Gilana, I'll share a little bit, and I love that song. I ended up singing it and chanting at the end. It's beautiful. So what phrase has struck me from my tradition is, today is a day that God has made, that the Lord has made. Rejoicing in the now, in the day, regardless of what has happened. Every day we start anew, and we have to. I'm looking at the sky with the clouds, and it's sunny, and it's not, and it's raining, and it's not. Reminding me to stay present, and taking and looking outside. Nature gives me joy. Outside gives me joy. Allie's cat going on the screen gives me joy. These little things that we have to really hold on to, despite all that we go through, because life gives us grief and sadness, and we are in isolation, many of us still, but we still have to cultivate that joy. So thank you for your wisdom and your words, and I love the songs. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much. Definitely also connect with those things.
Good morning. I want to thank you very much for the song and for this service. What gave me joy today was washing some apples and cooking them to making some applesauce and putting a little bit of cinnamon and smelling the fragrance of the cinnamon, and then tasting the applesauce afterwards, and taking a spoonful to my husband and saying, enjoy. And that gives me tremendous joy. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Applesauce is really important in my family as well.
Jews are always thinking the best.
Yeah, and thank you so much to everyone who has shared in the chat.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be with this interfaith community. And I'm thinking in my tradition, and I think in the tradition of all of us, we have this sense of a sustaining presence, regardless of what we call our maker, the sustaining presence that gives us everything that we will need for this day. And that's very comforting to me to know that it's this day that I need to concentrate on. I always have been given everything that I need for the particular day, and I can trust that that will happen today and in the days to come. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you all so much for sharing and for adding your perspectives and enriching this experience. We're going to conclude now with a prayer for a song for healing, which I will.
Rifa'inu Adonai v'neratei, Hoshienu v'nivashea, El karov l'chol korav, ach karov l'reav yisho. We pray for healing. heal us now. Heal us now. Hoshia et.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Galana.
Thank you very much, Gilana. It's a very,
Thank you, Gilana.
it's very beautiful, and it's a pleasure to have you leading our prayer today, Gilana. As for next week, everyone, I just want to share that next week we will have Professor Chanel Smith with us in the community prayer with the theme spirituality and mental health. So if you have time, please join us again next week, and hope all of you have a good day and great week. And we do have the Holy Ground Coffee Hour, so if you still want to lingering around and chat, feel free to do so.